Hello and welcome to this new video for the network adequacy solution. In this video, I will guide you through the three main workflows that we have to tackle the network adequacy and optimization challenges that your organization has. Let me start with the network adequacy workflow. As you can see, we have a task pane in the right side of ArcGIS Pro. In case you lost this pane, you just need to go to View and activate Task, and you will get again these three workflows. Also, it is important to keep in mind that you will have access to a database that have the information required for the solution, as well as a second database that shows the demo data that comes with the solution. This demo data is very useful whenever you want to try or whenever you want to test the solution. And so you will see that we have the task workflow here under the task section. And finally, we have a map for this solution. So let's go ahead again to task. Let's start with the network adequacy workflow. So the first step is to find your network data set. And with this field means is your street network data set. So let me go ahead here. You will see that in order to use this solution, you need to have access whether to StreetMap Premium, or if you have business analyst, you just need to go to the North American database and find this routing layer. All right, so we have our routing layer, then our members data. Let's go ahead to, in this pane, we have here our members information. In the map, you can see members in blue and our providers in red. So let's select the members layer. In this case, adequacy members, and then adequacy providers, primary care providers. And we just need to run the tool. You can see all the activities that are happening behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, the software is creating an OD cost matrix. Basically, it's calculating the total distance and the total driving time from each of the members to the closest provider. As a result, what we will get are the lines that contains that information. So let's give it a minute. Excellent. So we get the results. You can see that we get the lines here. Just to clarify, these lines show us the connections between each of the members to providers. And maybe you have the impression that it's a straight distance between members to providers. But basically, if I open the table, what we will have is the total driving time is using street networks and the total driving distance. Perfect. So now let's go back to the task. Let's do the next step. And here is where we will create our report that will be generated based on the information that we get from the lines, meaning the total time, the current time, driving time and distance that my members are doing in my network compared to the standard that you want to use. By default, the tool has the CMS standard. So let me go ahead here, select members, my lines. Then from these lines, we get the time, total driving time, the total driving distance, and then we can select the standard we want to comply. So I will go ahead to database. If you go to the solution database, you will see that we have here uh, the standard, the table HSD 2019, choose that one, and that table is released by CMS once a year. This table contains the time and distance standards per each specialty. In this case, let's go and select primary care time and distance. Finally, we select counties, and that's it. We just need to run the tool. Perfect. So once the tool finish, what you will get is two main outputs. The first one is a report. Let me open it. That basically show you by county what is the percentage of compliance that you have in your network. So basically, for example, here, in terms of driving distance, this specific health plan has a 53% of compliance. That means that 53% of members are actually covered within the time and distance, in this case, the time that the CMS regulation requires. In terms of distance, though, 94% of members are covered, and so on for each county. Perfect. The second output that we get is this member outside service area. And this is what is amazing about using ArcGIS. You will have access to the spatial component of this analysis. So for example, easily you can see what are the members, who are the members that are outside your service areas or outside of the service areas that complied with the standard. So you're going to start thinking where you need to hire new providers and what is the better way to configure your network in order to address these gaps. Excellent. So let's go to the next step. The last step is related to the provider ratio standard that organizations have to follow in order to comply with CMS. For this standard, you need to enter members, again, providers, select the standard ratio. In this case, the table is this one, CMS provider ratio, and select the specialty. Let's go for primary care and finally counties. And let's run this tool. Excellent. So basically as an output, you will get 4 new layers. Let me turn off this. I have one group that is already symbolized. This one. Actually, this one we will apply symbology. So we will get this first layer that shows you the compliance ratio report per county. So let me apply symbology to this, and I will select unique values, and let's select the compliance ratio. So you can see here, for example, in this purple color, all those counties that have failed, they don't have the number of providers that are required for CDC. So for example, sorry, for CMS. If I open this table, you can see that we have the standard here that comes from CMS. So for example, in LA, you need at least to have 184 primary care providers and so on for each county. This is the number of providers that you have, the count of points, and then the field that says if you fail or pass, and what is the lack of provider that you have. Also, you will get a subset of the members and um, providers that are within these non-compliant counties. So as you can see, the network adequacy workflow basically answered the three main questions for your CMS report. What are, if you are complying with the driving time uh, standard, if you are complying with the, if you're in compliance with the driving distance standard, or if you're in compliance with the total number of providers that you need per each county. Now, finally, let me show you a couple of things here. What I want to show you is that we can finish this first workflow, and we're going to start with the second one, which is the network optimization part. In this workflow, basically, we will select the results of our network adequacy workflow. As you remember, we got those members that were basically outside the service areas. So we can take those members here, and then we can aggregate those members. And as a result, we will get a layer like this, those hexagon bins. Perfect. We can apply a symbology to those hexagon bins using the total number of members per each hexagon. Awesome. And now the second step is to publish this layer to our GIS portal. So once we publish this layer into our portal, we can plug the layer into a Web App Builder template that you will have access. In this Web App Builder, we can simulate what if scenarios to compare what is the outreach of each of these providers or potential providers that you want to analyze to optimize your network. So let me show you. For example, here I will select this one. Let's say we have another option here in Fontana and another option close to Hemet. And then let's go ahead and evaluate these three options using driving time, 20 minutes driving time. Let's use a name. We just need to run the analysis. And as a result, we will get our three areas. And now what I can do is evaluate each of these service areas to see what is the outreach for this doctor. How many members are without my compliant service areas I can reach with this new provider. In this case, 86. In the second provider, let's go ahead here. Let's see, 129. And this one, let's see, let's select again in a second. There we go. It's calculating. It seems there is a bug here. Yeah, I will need to check that. But you can see how I can basically select any of these areas and get the number of members. Perfect. So let's go ahead to the last workflow. The last workflow is to finish the travel burden assessment. And this is one of the most powerful workflows that we have right now. in our solution. Again, for this trouble burden assessment, what we need is the information of our members. But what we will do basically is to understand, number one, how important how important is each of the nodes in your network, or how much important is each of the providers in your network, and which of those nodes or providers are key to have a strong network, and where you have too much risk to impose a high trouble burden into your members if you lost one provider. So let me show you how this works. If I go ahead here and select members, we have the inputs, we have members, we run the first step. So the first step is basically to take the member information that we have and to create a buffer, because what we will do is to geo-enrich this member information. So if I go ahead here, you can see that we are getting information on poverty level. Why we are getting this information? Basically, what this trouble burden assessment tool will do is it will take into consideration information like poverty, frequency of visits, what is the difference in distance in terms of driving distance between the closest provider and the second closest provider. In that way, we are creating an index called isolation index. And we are taking all these variables to calculate this trouble burden score. So for example, if you have a person that lives uh, relatively far from, let's say this person, he lives closer to the provider than this person. However, this person, if we geo-enrich this layer, is under the poverty level, and also he needs to go to this provider to have dialysis, for example. So the frequency of visits is higher. And that means that if you lost this provider, this member will be more impacted than this in your network. That means also that this member probably is most likely to change to a different network if he sees or he feels that it's more impacted if you lost one provider, or if your configuration is not the best. So that's why we are using those variables. So let's go ahead here, select our buffer layer, run this, and basically we are enriching this layer now. All right, we have the enriched layer. Next step, again, we will select our members data, the travel burden. We will select the enriched polygons, run the tool. Excellent. So remember, you need to select the members layer from the network adequacy layer. Then you get your enriched layer, your buffer enriched layer. And this step basically is bringing that data into the member point data. So the next step basically is the main step, which is calculating the trouble burden. So again, you need to find your network layer, that is in your routing data set, then your members data, which is basically these enriched members, your providers data. Let's go ahead and select primary care providers. Now, this enriched member layer have information that is coming from my internal system, like the frequency of visits. Then we just need to select the enriched layers or variables that we pull from business analyst. And basically, once we select those variables, we are very close to finish this process. We will get amazing results with this. Awesome. We run the tool. Behind the scenes, this tool is number one, generating a OD cost matrix, and more than that, is calculating the distance to the closest provider as well as the distance to the second closest provider to find what is the difference between those two distances. That's what we will call the isolation score. That's one of the variables. Then we have frequency of visits, we have poverty ratios, and combining all these three variables, we will identify for each of the members what is the travel burden score for each of those. Then we will summarize those values per each of the providers to find what is the average travel burden score per provider. So as a result, let's give it a minute. Excellent. So we got the results. Let me go ahead here and show you how those looks like. Let me get rid of these layers that we don't need. Perfect. So we got the travel burden for providers, convenience members score. Let me apply some symbology here. There we go. We have the symbology for the providers. Let's apply for the members the same symbology. Again, we'll use the convenience score and we'll apply it over color ramp. Awesome. All right, so here you can see how, for example, there are some providers. Let me turn off one layer here. Perfect. This one. You can see which providers have the highest score on travel burden. Here, for example, you can notice that there is a lot of members that if they lose this provider, they will be highly impacted in terms of the travel burden. It's not only because they will have to travel more, but because they have a high dependency on this doctor, whether because of the frequency of visits or because of their poverty level. There is different places where you wouldn't expect to have higher rates. For example, here we have a higher rate also of travel burden score, or here. So you can see how this tool really can give you insights in how to optimize your network. Thank you.